Right. Okay. So we need to talk about the three different types of neurons. So basically, we went through the anatomy of a neuron. We actually spoke about the structure of the neuron and what actual neuron does, what are the different parts of the neuron, and what are the functions of those three different parts of the neuron. We actually discussed about it. Last day, if you can remember, we spoke that neuron has this tendons. Sorry, neuron has this dendrons, and also these axon terminals. If you can remember, the dendrons are these, right? Dendrons are these. These are dendrons, and the dendrites are the small branchings, and then the axon is this, and axon terminals are these, right? So we went through all of these, and then when we were talking about the function of a neuron, if you can remember, we discussed neuron can be a dendrite of a neuron can be now anyway a neuron is connected to another neuron via a synaptic cleft. That's a free space in between the two neurons. So no electrical impulses can be transmitted through this space. Only chemical materials, which are called neurotransmitters, could be transported or transmitted over this synaptic cleft, right? So then basically we discussed when we are talking about the function of the neuron, dendrites of a neuron can be connected to another neuron or to another organ, right? Now when you come to those organs are supposed to be sensory organs most of the time, right? Because we are talking about the dendrites of the neuron. This is the dendrite, right? Okay, so here are the dendrites. If you can remember, the dendrites of a neuron brings the nerve impulses into the cell body of the neuron. Dendrites of a neuron brings the nerve impulses into the cell body of the neuron. So then this neuron, let's mark it as number 2. This is the number 2 neuron. So this neuron will be receiving impulses through the dendrites and dendrons to the cell body. That's what simply happens. So these impulses could be transferred into the neuron number 2 by two organs. That is, number 1 by another neuron, or else by a organ. Now in this case, this organs becomes a sensory organ, right? So you know there are 5 sense organs: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the skin. So a neuron could be received with impulses from two things, either from another neuron or else from a sensory organ. So next thing, what a neuron can into what a neuron can hand over impulses. When you talk about hand overing the impulses from one neuron, a neuron can transfer, a neuron can hand over impulses into another neuron. Okay, so through a synaptic cleft, a neuron can transfer impulses what it has received to another neuron. Okay, or else this neuron can hand over impulses into effectors. I told you there are 2 types of effectors, right? Effectors are muscles or glands. Okay, muscles or glands. Now glands in the sense you know salivary glands, which saliva. Now just imagine you look into a delicious food. You have not tasted, but it looks delicious. So by your sight, you feel that it's delicious, and then you started salivation. That is as a coordination of your nervous system. Now impulses are received from your eyes into the brain, and then the impulses will be impulses regarding this eyesight of the food will be handed over to the salivary glands in your mouth. So then the salivation starting to take place, right? Simple. So whenever you feel a nice smell of a food, right, the same thing happens. You smell the food, then the nose stimulate the impulses, nose send this impulse into the brain, and then the brain send these impulses back again into the salivary glands to secrete saliva, right, to alarm you that it is a delicious food. And if you are like if you are to eat it, because salivation is important, because contains some enzyme which is helpful for the digestion of starting to the initiation of the digestion of the food, right? So that is what it really happens. The impulses received from a neuron can be handed over to a gland. There are several glands, right? There are different glands: salivary glands, thyroid gland, adrenal gland. There are a lot of pituitary, thyroid, lot of glands are there, right? It can either be a muscle, right? Now, just imagine that you're looking and talking, looking at somewhere and talking to a person. Meanwhile, at the edge of your eye, you see that see that there's a ball coming towards to hit your head, right? But now you suddenly see it. There's an impulse, right? That impulse is recorded from your eye. It is a sensory organ, and then that impulse will be taken into your brain, and then finally, what if you remain in the same place? The ball would come, the ball will hit you and damage you. So then the impulse will be immediately handed over to your neck muscles. So then you use the neck muscles to move your head. So then you get prevented by the shot, right? So simply like that. So impulses from a neuron can be handed over to a gland or else to muscle, right? So impulses can be received by a neuron from another neuron or else from another organ. The organs are specified. They are sensory organs. Out of all 5 sensory organs, it can be one. And then a neuron can hand over impulses into two things: one into another neuron, or else into another neuron, or else into a effector. Effectors are two types. One is glands, and one type is glands, and the other type is muscles. Right. This is the simple thing that you have to know about the neurons and their impulses. Right. And then so depending on the function, the location of the neuron, we can classify the neurons into 3 types. That is sensory neurons, motor neuron, and interneuron. Now, obviously, you would understand whenever I say okay, sensory neuron, okay, should be definitely connected to the sensory organs, right? Yeah, dendrites of the sensory organs are connected to the sensory organs. Dendrites, so then the sensory organs, when they capture some impulses from the external environment, the impulses of sensory neurons will be handed over to the sensory neuron, right? Now, if the eye sees something, if the mouth tastes something, that impulse will be sensed. That impulse will be sensed by the sensory neuron. Sensed by the eye, and then it will be transferred into the sensory organ, right? Sensory neuron, right? Sense organ senses it, and then the impulse will be handed over to the sensory neuron. That's what simply happens. So simply, the sensory neuron receive impulses from sensory organs. Okay. So dendrites of sensory neurons are definitely connected to the sensory organs. Let's write it down quickly. Let's write it down. Guys, are you up? Are you there, guys? Hello. Hello. People, are you still connected?
Yes, I can hear. Yeah.
Anit Katya Tinanesh. Amma Shanupi drubbed. Elisha, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, start to write. So we're writing about the sensory neurons. Transmit impulses from the sense organs to the central nervous system. Transmit impulses from the sensory organs to the central nervous system. That is the first point. Transmit impulses from the sensory organs to the central nervous system. So the impulses received by the sensory organs will be carried until up to the central nervous system by the sensory neurons. Okay, right. The next point. Cell body is present. Now we are talking about the cell body of sensory neuron. Cell body is present. Cell body is present at the center of the nerve fiber. Cell body is present at the center of the nerve fiber. So see here, if you could see here, this is one of the examples for a sensory neuron. So now earlier when we were talking about the anatomy of the neuron, we spoke that we discussed that the dendrites are arrives from the cell body, and the axon was only only into one direction. Axon was protruding only into one direction. But in this case, you can see that the cell body is located in between the axon. That means from the dendrites, there is an axon runs, right? These are the dendrites. From the dendrite, there is an axon runs, and then at the middle of that axon only you have the cell body. And then again the axon run, and then you have the axon terminals. Okay, so nerve in the middle of the nerve fiber only you find the cell body. So that was the second point. Cell body is present at the center of the nerve fiber. Cell body is present at the center of the nerve fiber. Cell body is present at the center of the cell nerve fiber. Third point is cell bodies of sensory neurons. Cell bodies of sensory neurons. Cell bodies of sensory neurons. Cell bodies of sensory neurons are present inside a ganglia.
So what is it, sir? You said it last.
Ganglia. ඔයා හිටියේ නැද්ද සිකුරාදා ක්ලාස් එකේ?
No, sir.
ඔයාට මිස් වුණාද ඒක?
Oh,
cell bodies present, cell bodies of a sensory neurons are present inside a ganglia. The singular is ganglion. You can write in brackets the meaning of this. Write in brackets the meaning. A cluster of nerve cell bodies. A cluster of nerve cell bodies. A cluster of nerve cell bodies. Slash a collection of nerve cell bodies. A collection of nerve cell bodies. Cluster of nerve cell bodies. A collection of nerve cell bodies is called a ganglion. Is called a ganglion. Cluster of nerve cell bodies. A collection of nerve cell bodies is called a ganglion. Now this is the thing. So when you are talking about this, now if you can see here the sensory neurons, when you are talking about the sensory neurons and the middle of the nerve fiber only you find the cell body, nerve cell body. So then just imagine it is an eye. Okay, it's an eye. So you have the eye, and then the dendrites of a sensory neurons are connected to this eye. You have the cell body. No, not you have. You don't have the cell body like this, right? So cell bodies. Now you have the axon running through, and then at the middle of the axon you have the cell body, and then axon again runs and then goes to the axon terminus. Now, when you talk about the sensory organ, there are many, and when you talk about the skin, if you talk about the skin, not about the eye, because I would be taking only the optic nerve from the eye towards the central nervous system. No, if you talk about the skin is a large organ, as you know, right? Skin is the largest organ present inside your body, right? Skin, when you talk about the skin, from different places of the skin, there has to be different sensory neurons should be reaching your central nervous system. As I told you, central nervous system is composed of two main things: the brain and the spinal cord. Brain is composed of totally neurons. Spinal cord also, as I told you, it's a nerve fiber bundle which runs in between your vertebral column, which are called the backbone, which is called the backbone. So a backbone, through the backbone, you have a hollow structure through which the nerve fiber bundle runs, which is called the spinal cord. Okay. So then skin, which is the largest organ in our body. So from different parts of the skin, there has to be different sensory neurons reaching the central nervous system. So it is not only one sensory neuron reaching. So there has to be different sensory neurons reaching. So almost now, few of those nerve cell bodies of sensory neurons will be collected and forms a cluster like thing. We call it as a ganglia. We call it as a ganglia. Not that the sensory neuron cell bodies are scattered here and there in the body in different parts. So imagine like අපේ අතේ ඉඳලා එන අතේ skin එකේ ඉඳලා එන sensory neurons ටික කියලා හිතන්නකෝ. අතේ skin එකේ ඉඳලා එන sensory neurons ගොඩක cell bodies are collected at one point and forms a cluster. That cluster is called the ganglia, nerve ganglia, neuroganglia. Not neuroglia. Neuroglia is something else. Neuroganglia, neuroganglion or neuroganglia. Did you get my point, guys? What is the neuroganglia? Sensory nerves, godaka nerve cell bodies, hamatanama scatter velane. They will be collecting into one point and forms a cluster, a collection, which is called the neuroganglia. Can you get that point, guys? Hello.
So repeat it. Repeat it.
Elisha, what are you? Elisha, did you get that?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Okay. How the Sashan then skin එක ගන්නකො skin එක ගත්තාම skin එකේ ඉඳලා එක nerve cell එකක් විතරක් නෙමෙයි ඉන්නේ nerve neurons ගොඩක් එනවනේ right ඔය එන neurons ගොඩේ ගොඩක් එනවනේ neurons ඔය neurons ගොඩක එනකොට ඒගොල්ලොන් ඒ හැම neuron එකක්ම එක දිග නෙමෙයිනේ skin එකේ finger tip එකක ඉඳලා එන neuron එක ඔයාගේ shoulder එකේ ඉඳලා central nervous system එකට එන neuron එකට වඩා දිගයිනේ ඔයා ගන්නකො ඔයාගේ hand එකේ finger tip එකේ ඉඳලා එන neuron එකේ දිග ඔයාගේ body එකේ skin එකේ shoulder එකේ ඉඳලා එන central nervous system එකට එන දුරට වඩා දිගයි. එතකොට මේ හැම එකේම nerve fibers එක එක sizes. හරිද? sensory nerves වල nerve fibers එක එක sizes. එතකොට ඔය sensory nerves වල nerve fibers එක එක තැන් දිග වුණාම ඒගොල්ලෝගේ nerve cell bodies උත් තැන් තැන් වල locate වෙන්නේ. එහෙම locate වෙන්නේ නැහැ sensory nerves වල usually. වෙන්නේ sensory nerves ගොඩක nerve cell bodies එකතු වෙලා එක තැනක cluster එකක් විදිහට තමයි ඉන්නේ. And that is called a nerve cell cluster. Neuroganglia කියලා කියන්නේ යාට. දැන් තේරුණාද?
Okay, sir. Then තේරුණා.
හරි. Right. අපි යන් ඊළඟ part එකට. Right. Okay. The next point. Dendrites of a sensory nerve. Dendrites of a sensory nerve. Dendrites of a sensory nerve are connected. Dendrites of a sensory nerve are connected. So here is a sensory nerve. Here are the sensory nerve dendrites. These are connected to sensory organs. Dendrites of a sensory nerve are connected. Dendrites of a sensory nerve are connected to sensory organs. Dendrites of a sensory nerve are connected to sensory organs. Okay. All right. Then we'll be talking about the motor neurons. ළමයි motor neurons වලින් තමයි central nervous system එකේ දැන් අපි දන්නවනේ sensory nerves bring the nerve impulses from the sensory organs toward the central nervous system, right? Sensory nerves bring the nerve impulses from the sensory organs toward the central nervous system, which means to the brain or to the spinal cord. So from the brain or the spinal cord, that means from the central nervous system, impulses will be carried out into the effectors to bring about an effect. To bring about an effect, the impulses on the central nervous system will be carried out or else transported towards the effectors, and that is being done by the motor neuron. Okay, so motor neurons, axon terminals. So dendrites of the motor neurons are simply connected into the central nervous system, and axon terminals of the motor neuron are connected into the effectors, either into a gland or else into an effector. Okay, so write like this. Function of a motor neuron function of a motor neuron is to transmit nerve impulses. Function of a motor neuron is to transmit nerve impulses function of a motor neuron is to transmit nerve impulses from the central nervous system to the effectors, from the central nervous system to the effectors. And if you can see here, the cell body of a motor neuron is like star shape. You have a lot of fibers in it, right? See here, it looks like a star. You have a lot of fibers in it. So write like this: motor neuron has a star-shaped cell body with many fibers. Motor neuron has a cell body. Sorry, motor neuron has a star-shaped cell body with many fibers. Motor neuron has a star-shaped cell body with many fibers. Next point. The axon of a motor neuron is long. Now, axon of a motor neuron is very long. Sometimes it's longer than 1 meter. Right? Axon of a motor neuron is long. Sometimes longer than 1 meter. Axon of a motor neuron is long. Sometimes longer than 1 meter. You have to write it. Axon of a motor neuron is long. Sometimes longer than 1 meter. Next point. This is very important. Dendrites and the cell body, dendrites and the cell body, dendrites and the cell body of a motor neuron. Now, this is very important. Dendrites and the cell body of a motor neuron are found inside the central nervous system. Dendrites and the cell body of a motor neuron is found inside the central nervous system. Dendrites and the cell body of a motor neuron is found inside the central nervous system. So basically, I'm talking about all of these three neurons with their locations. This is a sketch that you need to note down. So I would mention this is CNS, which is the central nervous system. You obviously know, you would know that the complete interneuron. This is I'm marking it as interneuron. IN is interneuron. Interneuron is inside the central nervous system. That is obvious. So these are the dendrites of the these are the axon terminals of the interneuron, and these are the dendrites of the interneuron. Okay, so that's of course inside the central nervous system because it is the interneuron. And then we were talking about the motor neuron. Motor neuron cell body is inside the central nervous system. This is motor neuron. I'm marking the MA. And the dendrites and the cell bodies inside the central nervous system. And then the outside the central nervous system, you have the cell axon and the axon terminals. And let's talk about the sensory neuron. Sensory neurons, dendrites are connected into sensory organs. Dendrites are connected into sensory organs. So I would mark it as sensory neurons. And then this axon comes, and the axon terminals are found inside what? Axon terminals are found inside central nervous system. And then this motor neuron goes and connected to glands or muscles. I would mention that also, glands or else muscles. So this is how the neurons would locate. Dendrite of a sensory neuron is connected definitely into sensory organ. I have marked it with the eye. You have 5 sensory organs, hope you know it. And then the axon terminals of the sensory neuron is found inside the central nervous system. The complete interneuron, the axon terminals, the nerve cell body of the interneuron, and then the dendrites of the interneuron is found completely inside the central nervous system. And then just we discussed the motor neuron cell body and the dendrites are found inside the central nervous system. And the axon of the central nervous system, axon of the motor neuron is too long, as we discussed, and it runs out of the central nervous system to reach glands, which means effectors, glands, so muscles. So axon terminals of the motor neuron is definitely connected to either muscles or glands. So I want you to sketch it down very quickly. Take 15 seconds to quickly have a sketch. This central nervous could be brain. This could be brain or spinal cord. So wherever you find a central nervous system, either brain or the spinal cord, the interneurons are found inside of the central nervous system. So the thing which are called interneurons are found inside the brain or either inside the spinal cord. Nowhere else. Don't take too much of time. Quickly note it down. So I want you to immediately go through the, now once after we finish this lesson, I want you to immediately go through your what do you call the worksheet what I have given to you, right? The worksheet what I have given to you that revises complete what you have learned in this lesson. So done with this, guys? Shanoki, Elisha, are you done with this? Can I move on?
Give me a second.
Okay, sure. Elisha?
Sir, give me a second.
Okay, here, drop Upe message telling that we did the remaining part of the lesson. Otherwise, if she misses, she would be like confused on Monday when we start to do the mixtures. And remind her to do the paper also.
Okay, sir.
Chanuki, Monday school starting, eh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So interneuron, now you know where interneuron is. It's completely inside the central nervous system. What is the function of the interneuron? It connects the motor neuron with the sensory neuron. Now, interneuron is inside the central nervous system. Impulse is carried out into the central nervous system by the, now look here, impulse is carried out, now impulse from the eye is carried out through the sensory neuron into the central nervous system. And then the impulse is received by the interneuron, which is inside the central nervous system, and it connects this impulse from the sensory nerve into the motor neuron. So simply the function of the interneuron is to connect the sensory neuron with motor neuron. So we call them as a relay neurons. They can relay the interneuron, they can relay the sensory neuron with motor neuron. They can connect the sensory neuron with motor neurons, right? So you can simply write the first point for the interneuron. The whole interneuron is present inside the central nervous system. The whole interneuron is found inside the central nervous system. Whole interneuron is found inside the central nervous system. As you see, the axon of interneurons are very short. See, axon of interneurons are very short. So let's mention it. Axons are short. Axons are very short. Axons are very short. The axons are very short. Same like motor neurons, you can see many fibers, isn't it? So you can write that also. Many fibers are present. Many fibers are present. Of course, the final point is mentioned. Interneuron connects the sensory neuron with motor neuron. I have mentioned that. Before that, you can write interneurons are called relay neurons because they can connect sensory neurons with motor neurons. Interneurons are called relay neurons. Interneurons are called relay neurons. Okay, right. So that's it about that. Okay, now guys, listen to me and answer me. I want few things to be discussed with you, right? Now, Shanak, you got to tell me, okay? Like, listen to me. right? So now Shanuki, you want to tell me, right? Shanuki, you're talking with Elisha, just imagine you're in a deep chat with Elisha physically, right? Meantime, someone kicks a ball, and from the corner of the eye, from the edge of the eye, you see that the ball is coming towards you. Okay. Now, if you stay the same in the same position, the ball would hit you and you will fall down, right? And you will get damaged. So a sudden action should be now we call such a change in the environment as a stimuli. A change in the internal or external environment is called as stimuli. So we actually discussed about this in, I think, in the 8th lesson, growth or lesson the growth like living characteristics we discussed in that lesson. Okay. So anyway, so there's a ball coming towards you while you are in a deep chat with your friend, and you, from the edge of your eye, you happen to see it. Now you need an immediate action. Now for this action, that is a response that you're taking against the stimuli, right? There's a stimuli which is coming, the ball which is coming towards you, and you are making a response, a reaction against it. Otherwise, you would get damaged. Now, what would really happen, Shanuki? You are sensing it by your eyes. Eyes take the impulse and hand it over to the sensory neuron. Sensory neuron takes the impulse and take it to the central nervous system and hand it over to the interneuron. Interneuron hand over the signal into the motor neuron. Motor neuron brings out the impulse into your neck muscles, and you move the neck. That is your effect. That is your response. Now, tell me, Shanuki, minimum how many neurons should be involved to make this action?
So you're asking the time
No,
that it takes?
No, I'm asking minimum number of neurons which should be involved for this action.
Like 5.
How many? No, which 5? There was a sensory neuron involved,
Yeah.
and then the sensory neuron got the impulse from the eye, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was the stimuli? The ball coming towards you. Okay. And what was the stimuli? The ball coming towards you was the stimuli. And which organ senses it?
The eye.
And then which eye can hand over an impulse to the sensory neuron?
To the brain.
No, sensory neuron. Sensory neuron takes it to the brain.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So brain ke mona neuron ne kata interneurons.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So from the interneurons, the impulse will be handed over into what?
To the
motor neurons. Okay, into the motor neurons. Right. Then the motor neurons will be taking the impulse into your neck muscle. එතකොට නේද neck muscle එක move කරලා ඔයා බෝලෙන් බේරෙන්නේ.
Okay, so sir, from the motor neuron, it goes to the neck muscle.
Yeah. So how many neurons? Sensory neuron, interneuron, and motor neuron. Altogether, how many?
3 neurons.
Three. So this type of action, an immediate action. Now, can we just imagine of such an action? Action. Imagine that your immediately that surface is bombed, right? So what would you immediately do?
You'd like immediately
yeah. That is also action. When you touch the surface, how do you feel it from your skin?
Yeah.
The sensory organs. Then now what is the stimuli? The warmth of the surface, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then skin sense there is a sensory organ. Sense impulse neuron
interneuron.
No, sensory neuron.
Oh, sensory neuron. Yeah. Motor neuron.
Nah, sensory neuron ke paas central nervous system mein impulse kiyanne.
Oh, okay.
How the central nervous system mein
sensory neuron? No. Motor neuron.
No. Interneuron.
Interneuron.
Okay. ඊට පස්සේ interneuron එකෙන් ඔය signal එක hand over කරන්නේ කාටද?
motor neuron, right?
Motor neuron. ඔව්.
Yeah.
Motor neuron එකෙන් impulse එක කකුලට යවලා හරියනවද? දැන් අතනේ රත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. අතේ muscle එකට impulse එක යවනවා to take the hand away. Can you understand?
Yes, sir. So
Then when
before interneuron, what was it? Sensory neuron.
sensory neurons are connected to the sensory organs.
Okay.
Okay, so the main action now Shanuki, this action, is it conscious or unconscious? Api දැනගෙනද කරන්නේ, like we suddenly do it and later we realize okay the surface was warm, that's why I took the hand away.
Yeah.
එහෙම
So,
නේද එලීෂා?
yeah.
සෂාන් එහෙම නේද?
Yes, sir.
හරිද? එතකොට මේවා unconscious action, we call them as reflex action. We call them as what? Reflex actions. Okay, මේවා unconscious immediate response එකක් දෙන්නේ. මම අහන්නේ මේවා අපේ brain එකට ගිහිල්ලා process වලට subject වෙනවද? like මම අහන්නේ දැන් temperature අපි සමහර දේවල් තියෙනවානේ process කරන ඒවා thinking වලට යන ඒවා තියෙනවානේ. ඒ වගේ actions නැත්තම් processing වලට subject වෙන්නේ නැති immediate actions ද මේවා?
Non subjective.
මේවා process වෙන්නේ නැහැ. right, දැන් මේක process කරන්න ඉන්න ගියා නම් warm මේ hot surface එක අල්ලලා මේක රස්නේ වගේ කියලා හිත ඉන්නකොට අත පිච්චිලා ඉවරයි. Can you understand the familiars? Guys, familiars, can you understand that?
Yes, sir.
හරිනේ? හරිද? හිත ඉන්න, these are very immediate actions. අල්ලපු ගමන් ටක් ගාලා අත ගන්නවා. Can you understand? Right? So reflex actions are unconscious actions, right? They are unconscious actions, not subjected into what you call processing. Right, like this. Reflex actions, a point. Reflex actions are sudden responses, sudden unconscious responses. Reflex actions are sudden unconscious actions. Sorry. Reflex actions are sudden unconscious responses. Reflex actions are sudden unconscious responses. Reflex actions are sudden unconscious responses taken against stimuli. Taken against stimuli. Shanuki, look here. Shanuki, look here. Are you there, Shanuki?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then Shanuki, done නැතු කොහේ හරි අත තියනවා. Your palm you keep somewhere on a surface. දන්නේ නැහැ. And palm එක නෙමෙයි අපි හිතමුකෝ you're walking on barefoot, right? මුකුත් නැහැ, right? Shoes මුකුත් නැහැ. Barefoot එකෙන් ඇවිද ඉන්නවා. In the garden there's a thorn, මොකක් හරි sharp object එකක් තියෙනවා. And you're like about to trample on it, right?
Yeah.
ඕකට trample කරන්න යනකොට ඕන තරම් අපිට experience තියෙනවානේ ඕක trample කරපුවාම අඩිය තියන්න කලින් වාගේ අඩිය ඉස්සෙනවා. ඉස්තිලා අර කට්ට පොඩ්ඩක් ඇනිලා තනි කකුලෙන් උඩ පැඩ අනිත් කකුල උස්ස ගන්නවා නේද අපි ටක් ගාලා.
Yeah.
ඊට පස්සේ බලනකොට right කට්ට ගොඩක් ඇනෙලා නැහැ පොඩ්ඩක් ඇනලා තියෙන්නේ ගන්නවා හිමින් කට්ට. නේ? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ඔය කට්ට උඩ completely step කරලාද? step කරා නම් මුළු කට්ටම වහිනවනේ අපේ කකුල ඇතුලට.
Yeah. No, sir. We have.
එහෙම වෙලා නැහැනේ. right, so then අපි කට්ට ඇතුලටම යන්න කලින් අපේ action එකක් වැඩ කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒකනේ කකුල උස්සගෙන තනි කකුලේ උඩ පැන බලන්නේ මොකක්ද දැනෙන්නේ කියලා. right, so that's a ඕක ටක් ගාලා වෙච්ච immediate action එකක්. හරිද? දැන් ඔයා අඩිය තියෙනකොට මොකක් හරි stimulus එකක් තියෙනවා. stimulus එකක් තියෙනවා. මොකද්ද stimulus එක? pin එක තමයි stimulus. right?
Yeah. The pain.
ඕක sense කරන්නේ වගේ soul එකේ තියෙන skin එකෙන් නේද?
Yeah.
ඒක නේද receptor එක?
Yeah.
ඒකනේ sensory organ එක. නේද? sensory organ එක කියන්නේ skin එක එහෙනම් ඈ. දැන් ඔය sense එක අපේ sensory organ එක sensory neuron එකදී මේ මොකද්ද neuron එක? sensory neuron එක skin එකට connect කරලා තියෙන sensory neuron එක. ඔය sensory neuron එක දිගේ අරන් යනවා අපේ central nervous system එක. කොහෙටද අරන් යන්නේ? central nervous system.
Central nervous.
ඕක brain එකට අරන් යන්නේ නැහැ ශනුකු. central nervous system එකේ parts දෙකක් තියෙනවා කියලා මම කියවනේ brain එක තියෙනවා spinal cord එක තියෙනවා. දැන් කකුලේ වෙච්ච reflex එකක් නම් කකුලෙන් නම් ඔය action එක දෙන්න ඕන. right? කකුලට නම් ඔය impulse එක ආවේ. ඕක යන්නේ central nervous system එක through කියලා මේ spinal cord එක. මම කියන එක තේරුණා ශනුකු. මේක brain එකට අරන් යන්නේ නැහැ. spinal cord එක through තමයි යන්නේ. හරිද? එතකොට ස්පයිනල්
Yes.
කෝඩ් එක through යනකොට මේ ඉම්පල්ස් එක සෙන්සර් නර්ව් එක දිගේ ගෙන ආපු ඉම්පල්ස් එක ඊළඟට හම්බෙන්නේ කාටද? ස්පයිනල් කෝඩ් එක ඇතුලේ තියෙන.
Interneutron.
අන්න හරි ඉන්ටර්නියුරෝන් එකට.
Interneutron.
ඉන්ටර්නියුරෝන් එකෙන් ඔය ඉම්පල්ස් එක ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් කරන්නේ කාටද?
Ventral root.
no motor neuron.
Motor neutron.
Yeah.
Motor neuron.
motor neuron. motor neuron එක ඉම්පල්ස් එක අරන් යන්න ඕන වාගේ අතටද.
කකුලට.
කකුලේ මසල් එකකට නේ. එතකොට කකුලේ මසල් එක ලිෆ්ට් අප් කරන්න පුළුවන් අපිට. එතකොට කකුල
Yeah.
බිම තියන්න තියෙන්නේ. තේරුණාද කතාව?
Yeah.
දැන් the same thing එලිෂා අපිට බෝල් එක එනවනේ. බෝල් එක ඇඟේ වදින්න එනවනේ. බෝල් එක ඇඟේ වදින්න එනකොට අපි ඕක බලන්නේ ඇහෙන්. sensory organ එක the ball coming towards you is the impulse. Ball coming towards you is the impulse. Stimulus. The ball coming towards you is the stimulus. ඕක sense කරන්නේ ඇහෙන්. බෝලයක් එනවා අපේ ඇඟ මූණ පැත්ත. ඊට පස්සේ ඇහැට කනෙක්ට් කරලා තියෙන සෙන්සර් නියුරෝන් එකකින් ඉම්පල්ස් එක අරන් යනවා සෙන්ට්‍රල් නර්වස් සිස්ටම් එකට. මට දැන් කියන්න උක අරන් යන්නේ බ්‍රේන් එක කියන සෙන්ට්‍රල් නර්වස් සිස්ටම් එකේ පාර්ට් එකටද නැත්නම් ස්පයිනල් කෝඩ් එකටද? දැන් ඇහැට තමයි ඉම්පල්ස් එක එන්නේ. කකුල් වලට එහෙම නෙමෙයි. දැන් සෙන්සර් නියුරෝන් එකකින් අරන් යන ඉම්පල්ස් එක අරන් යන්න ඕන බ්‍රේන් එක through ද නැත්නම් ස්පයිනල් කෝඩ් එක through ද? එලිෂා, your chance.
So, the brain
නේ මොකද ඇහැ ළඟ තියෙන බ්‍රේන් එකනේ. so ඉම්පල්ස් එක ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් වෙන්නේ බ්‍රේන් එක through. central nervous system එකකින් අරන් ආවා. sorry මේ sensory nerve එකකින් අරන් ආවා ඇහි ඉඳලා ඉම්පල්ස් එක. ඒක බ්‍රේන් එක through බ්‍රේන් එකේ ඉන්ටර්නියුරෝන් එක through ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් වුණා. ඊට පස්සේ මෝටර් නියුරෝන් එකට ගියා. දැන් මෝටර් නියුරෝන් එකකින් ඔය ඉම්පල්ස් එක අරන් ගිහලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ නේ කකුලට. අපිට කකුල නෙමෙයි මූව් කරගන්න ඕන කලින් ෂනුකී සිටුේෂන් එක වගේ දැන් මූණයි බේර ගන්න ඕන. එහෙනම් නෙක් මසල් එකට තමයි නෙක් මසල් එකේ මෝටර් නියුරෝන් එකට තමයි හෑන්ඩ් ඕවර් වෙන ඉම්පල්ස් එක. එලිෂා තේරුණාද?
Oh, sir.
Right. What about you, Shanuki?
Understood. So
So
what
them-
about like
Oh.
fingers? Like
What?
fingers also, it like goes to the hand muscle, right?
Yeah, finger එකක් මොන හරි වුණොත් අර මොම්ස් වගේ නිකන් සර්ෆස් එකක් අල්ලන්න ගියොත් ඒක ස්පයිනල් කෝඩ් එක through තමයි යන්නේ. සෙන්ට්‍රල් නර්වස් සිස්ටම් එක කියලා ඉන්නේ ස්පයිනල් කෝඩ් එක through. ඊට පස්සේ අපේ hand එකේ මසල් තමයි මෝටර් නියුරෝන් එකකින් ඉම්පල්ස් එක දෙන්නේ.
Okay.
To lift up the hand. Okay. හරිද?
Nice.
Okay, sir.
Right. Okay. හරි.
Sir,
දැන් එතකොට ඔයගොල්ලෝ අහන්න එලිෂා.
so I sensory organ එක නම්
ඔව්.
එතකොට යන්නේ brain එකටනේ.
බ්‍රේන් එකට. ඔව්.
Is it because the eye is close to the brain?
මෙහෙමයි. ඒව දැන් මෙහෙමයි. ඒකේ එහෙම not because of the close not because basically close to the brain. ඒකම නෙමෙයි reason එක. ඒකම නෙමෙයි reason එක. දැන් ඒ neurons arrange වෙලා තියෙන pattern එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ immediate response එක ගන්න ඕන තැන impulse එක එන තැන සහ immediate response එක දෙන්න ඕන තැන තුරු තමයි යන්නේ මොකෙන්ද කියලා determine. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මේ දැන් ඔය වගේ මේ reflexes වර්ග දෙකක් තියෙනවා. අපේ impulse එක යනවා නම් brain එක through අපි ඒකට කියනවා cranial reflex එකක් කියලා. එතකොට අපේ impulse එක යන්නේ central nervous system එක through spinal cord එකට නම් අපි ඒකට කියනවා spinal reflex එකක් කියලා. එතකොට මේ අපි ඉස්සලා කතා කරේ ෂනුකි කතා කරේ I එකකින් ආපු impulse ඒක cranial reflex එකක්. ෂනුකිට කතා කරේ කකුලට කට්ටක් කරන එක ඒක spinal reflex එකක්. ඔව් ඒක determine ඒ කියන්නේ ඒකම නෙමෙයි closed නිසා නෙමෙයි. මට එහෙම closed නිසා කියලා කියන්න බෑ මොකද එහෙම නැති වෙන situations තියෙනවා. මම එහෙම
So
කිව්වොත්
like talking about like your nose and your lips, එතකොට යන්නේ මොකටද?
ඒ brain තමයි. දැන් ඒ කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි. දැන් ඕක විතරක් නෙමෙයි reflex actions කියලා කියන්නේ. දැන් ඕගොල්ලෝ බලන්නේ ඔය external environment එකේ external stimulus එක්ක වෙන reflex actions විතරයි. එහෙමම නැහැ. දැන් හිතන්නකෝ ඔයා inhale කරනකොට මොකක් හරි dust එකක් ගිහලා nasal cavity එක irritate කරනවා. එතකොට sneezing කියලා එකක් තියෙනවනේ. ඒකත් reflex action එකක්. දැන් එතකොට ඒකත් reflex action එකක්. ඊට පස්සේ මොකක් හරි ඔයා නිකන් මොකක් හරි දැන් අපි සමහරලාට කණ්ඩ යනවට වඩා නිකන් අර මොකක් හරි කටේ දාගෙන බොක් ගාලා ගිලෙන්නේ. ගිලුනාම අර මොනවාද එන්නේ gurgling reflex එන්නේ නිකන් අර මොනවාද නිකන් vomit වෙන්න වගේ එකපාරට ගාලා නිකන් එන්නේ අර රිෆ්ලෙක්ස් එක. අන්න ඒකත් cranial reflex එකක්. තව ඒවා තියෙනවා spinal reflexes වල යන්නේවත් තියෙනවා නැත්තේ නැහැ. මේ ඉතින් දැන් අර ඔයාලා බලන්න දැන් අර external reflexes ගැන විතරයි external stimuli ගැන විතරයි. එහෙම නැහැ internal ඒවත් තියෙනවා spinal වලින් යන ඒවත් තියෙනවා internal reflexes. අපි හිමීට කතා කරමු. We have this lesson particularly talk about in depth when we talk about the biological processes. ඔයා දැන් පොඩ්ඩක් නිකන් summary එකක් කොල්ල තියාගත්තා. Anyway you're good. ඒක ඔළුවට දාගත්තා. Yeah.
So I have issue which is I mean which is the most fastest way of transferring the signals. It is cranial or the spinal.
එහෙම එකක් නෑ. ඒක එහෙම
සාමාන්‍ය head එකට වඩා මේ CNS එක සාමාන්‍ය වැඩිපුර fast එකක් දෙන්නේ. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපේ head එක eye contact එක කරන් ගත්තොත් සාමාන්‍ය අපිට latest
නෑ central nervous system එකේ තියෙනවා brain එකයි spinal cord එක දෙකම. හරිද? ඒකේ fastest කියලා නෑ දෙකේම තියෙන neurons එකම විදිහට එකම speed එකෙන් තමයි neurons කොහෙන් ගියත් impulses transmit වෙන්නේ. ඒක වෙනසක් නෑ. හරිද? ඒ කියන්නේ central nervous system එකේ brain එක අස්සින් ගියත් එකයි spinal cord එක අස්සින් ගියත් එකයි path එක දික් වුණොත් impulse transmission එකේ speed එක අඩු වෙන වැරෙන්න brain එක අස්සින් යනකොට හිමින් යන්නේ. එහෙම නෑ. ඔයා ඔය කියන්නේ සමහර දේවල් තියෙනවා අපි මේ කතා කරන්නේ reflex actions කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි stimuli එකකට අපි immediate පටස්තාව response එකක් දෙනවා කිසිම processing එකක් ඇතුලේ. දැන් අපි just imagine අපි ඔක්කොම batsmanලා right? අපි බෝලයක් එනකම් බලන් ඉන්නවා ඕකට බැට් කරන්න. උතනදී වැඩ කරන්නේ අපේ reflex actions නෙමෙයි. බෝලයක් එනවා නම් කවුරු හරි බෝල් කරනවා නම් අපිට බැට් කරන්න අපි බැට්ස්මන්ලා නම් වැඩ කරන්නේ රිෆ්ලෙක්ස් ඇක්ෂන්ස් නෙවෙයි. ඒ මොකද පිස්සුවක් වෙනවා. අපි බෝලයකට බෝලයක් දැම්මම බෝලේ දාන එක්කෙනාගේ posture එක, එයාගේ running posture එක, බෝලේ කොහෙද පිච් වෙන්නේ, ස්පින් වෙයිද, කොච්චර ස්පීඩ් එකක් තියෙයිද, බැට් එකේ මොන ස්ට්‍රෝක් එකද ගහන්නේ, මං එතකොට මේන්ටේන් කරන්න ඕන පොසිෂන් එක මොකද්ද, කොච්චර පවර් එකක් දෙන්න ඕනද, ඒ ඔක්කොම ප්‍රොසෙස් කරලා ෂොට් එක ගහන්නේ. ඒක රිෆ්ලෙක්ස් නෙමෙයි. ඒව රිෆ්ලෙක්ස් නෙමෙයි. දැන් එතකොට දැන් අර අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලා කතා කරපු වගේම external stimuli තියෙනවා subjected into thinking. ඒව process වෙනවා brain එකකින් හිතනවා අපි decisions ගොඩක් make කරනවා. ඒකනේ සමහර වෙලාවට සමහර කට්ටියට පුළුවන් බැට් කර ඉන්න posture එක පටස් ගාලා වෙනස් කරලා කට් එකක් ගහන්න. එයි processing වලට subjected. ඒව immediate actions නෙමෙයි. right? දැන් මේව එහෙම නැහැ. මේක කරන්න ඉන්න වැඩේ අපි දන්නේ නැහැ වෙලාව ඉවරනකම්. අපි දැන් ශානුකි කිව්වා ශානුකි මායි කතා කරා වගේ අර කට්ට ඇනිලා උඩ පයින්නකොට තමයි දන්නේ කට්ටක් ඇනිලා කියලා. කට්ට ඇනනකම් අපි දන්නේත් නැහැ. ඇනිලා එක කකුලක් උස්සගෙන උඩ පයින්නකොට තමයි තේරෙන්නේ මම මේ කට්ටක් ඇනිලා තමයි මේ කකුල උස්සන් දඟලන්නේ කියලා. අර බෝලේ කරාමත් එහෙමනේ. සමහරලාට බෙල්ල නමලා බලනවා එතකොට තමයි තේරෙන්නේ මගේ ළඟින් බෝලයක් ගියා කියලා. ඒක එච්චර මේ අර අපිට ප්‍රොසෙස් කරන්න එහෙම වෙලාවක් නැහැ. තේරුණා මේ කියන එක?
Yes sir.
හරි. right.
එතකොට sensitization
එක අපිට ඩිටර්මයින් කරන්න බෑ. ඒක ඔටෝමැටිකලි වෙනවා යා. ඒකේ ස්පීඩ් එක අරකයි ස්පීඩ් එක මේකයි අර ඉන්ජින් ස්පීඩ් එක වැඩි. එහෙම ගත්තොත් හරිනේ?
Okay sir.
right හරි. එහෙනම් මේ ඊළඟ කතාව දැන් මේ immediate actions වලට කියන reflex actions කියලා. මම කියවනේ reflex actions are immediate unconscious action taken against stimuli. එතකොට මේ වාද දැනගන්න ඕනේ reflex action එකට immediate reflex action එකට අනිවාර්යෙන්ම minimum neurons තුනක් involve වෙනවා. sensory neuron එකක් motor interneuron එකක් motor neuron එකක්. ඒක ලියා ගන්න මෙහෙම. reflex action minimally involves 3 neurons. A reflex action minimally involves 3 neurons. A reflex action minimally involves 3 neurons. Leon, sensor neuron, interneuron, motor neuron. එතකොට ඊළඟ point එක there are two reflex actions මොනවද? Spinal reflexes, cranial reflexes. Don't worry, I will give you examples when it comes to the necessary point. biological processes වල මේ examples දෙන්න. Cranial reflexes and spinal reflexes. There are two types of reflex action: spinal reflexes and cranial reflexes. Spinal reflexes, cranial reflexes කියලා වර්ග දෙකක් තියෙනවා. අපි ඔය examples කතා කරමු. අපි දැන් කතා කරපු ඒවත් categorize කරනවා. දැන් මම අපි දෙකක් තුනක් categorize කරගත්තා. And මේ impulses reflex action එකේදී impulses යන pathway එකට අපි කියනවා reflex arc එකක් කියලා. මේ sensory organ එකේ ඉඳලා sensory neuron එක දිගේ ගිහිල්ලා central nervous system එකේ ink neuron එක දිගේ ගිහිල්ලා motor neuron එක දිගේ ගිහිල්ලා effect අරගෙන යනවා. මෙන්න මේකට කියනවා reflex arc එකක් කියලා. ඒකත් mark කරගන්න. The pathway of transmission of next point. The pathway of transmission of nerve impulses during a reflex action. The pathway of transmission of nerve impulses during a reflex action. The pathway of transferring nerve impulses during a reflex action is called reflex arc. Hari, that's it for today. අපි එහෙනම් මේ paper එක discuss කරමු next day එකේ. Right.